Welcome to Intersection Chats. Today we are going to talk about the connection between personal brand story and marketing while sad. I am Reme Mancera, a personal brand story strategist. I am delighted to be here with Nailah. Thank you for accepting this invitation.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to, talk about being sad, one of my favorite topics, but also how it connects with my business.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so I just explain a little bit about what is your business about to have a bit of context of what you do, please.
Yeah, so I am a CX copywriter and strategist. I work primarily with other strategists and consultants and facilitators. Facilitators, I'm particularly keen to reach these days. Anyone who kind of does like done with you type of work. And I help tell the stories of their clients, essentially.
Nice. So let's go to the topic. So, how, in your experience and in your, what are your thoughts about that connection between personal brand story and marketing while sad?
I think as someone who's navigating like a chronic mental health condition, I think the narratives that you share or don't kind of shapes your brand story. So for me, my marketing differs from a lot of people. A lot of the sort of marketing narrative is to try to talk to everybody, even within this notion that you have a target audience. Like I've shared that I, would like to work with facilitators and strategists, but at the end of the day, I can't work with everyone um, because of the capacity that I have. I don't always have the energy to work with tons of clients or clients who are really keen to do things sort of quickly, for lack of a better word. And I want to emphasize that there's nothing wrong with wanting to get in, get out, and get a project done. It just doesn't work with my capacity. And therefore, we're not a good fit for each other. So that's why I would say it probably differs. And I'm really, even within that niche of done with you folks, I'm really looking to work with my fellow SADs, with my fellow energy entrepreneurs, just because they understand the challenges that we face. And there's significantly a lot less pressure around like deadlines and the like. So yeah, I respect people's need for urgency. It just is incompatible with my business. So when I think of my personal story, again, I came from corporate where like it was now, 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 now. People did not care. I have a pretty famous story that I tell a lot, which is that like we had worked, busted our butts for 3 weeks to do this campaign. CEOs decided that because a competing other company had a marginally better offer, we had to start over and we had to do it within 12 hours. And, I couldn't take lunch, I couldn't take breaks. All that stuff's really normalized. And I went into the bathroom to cry, but there was already like 4 people in there crying. So this whole notion of like urgency and pressure that comes from the corporate world still exists in the sort of online business world. And again, if that's something you are comfortable with and that's the way you work, I totally respect that. I am just not for you. And when I share my personal story of just all the burnout and all the pressure and all the stress and kind of how I needed to kind of be a solopreneur in order to manage my mental health better. That resonates with a particular group of people. And that's helpful for me because I don't have to necessarily feel like I'm making excuses because, I'm in the middle of a mental health crisis and I need more time. Like it's just been great for helping me find my people. But on the flip side, it is different than what we're told, right? Which is that you try to appeal to as many people as possible. But I like to set expectations. I work with a lot of transparency and I want you to get what you want. So if you want client stories done in 3 weeks and I can't deliver, I'm always happy to refer you to someone who can.
Mm, I love that. And I feel like this idea of how you sharing your what you stand for, what is like the way that you work and your approach is something so valuable, not just for attracting aligned clients, but also as a way to lead by example. You are allowing them to do the same, not just with the work that you do together, but even in their own businesses as something that they can give themselves permission, because I feel like I am also a solopreneur, and I feel like especially at the beginning of starting the business, there is a lot of pressure on how things should be done, and I feel like we need to unlearn certain things, because it's like, okay, I am running this, I am the one deciding what is a priority, how I do this. And I feel the key is like the communication with the people that you are supporting. So everyone is in the same page, and you know what are the expectations for you and for the others. So that's the key. And there might be people that this is not for them, and that's totally okay, because you are not getting into this relationship with a client that they are expecting something else that is not possible for you, or the focus is in another place. And then for you, maybe for some people the focus is in the urgency, but for others it's more into the creative or the innovation of the way of doing the certain way of doing things. And that's what is more valuable, because that's the approach that they like. So it's not either that one is the best way and the other is the bad way. It's just, okay, what I appreciate as the consumer or as the one facilitating. So I really like that you are bringing that up, and the idea of transparency. I feel like that's like the key when it's like you are attracting people that really appreciate that. It's not just they are okay with this; it's that they appreciate that approach. So it's something that they will value as well.
Yeah. And I was actually discouraged actively of putting that on my sales page to be like, you're going to deter clients. And I was like, great. Because on the reputation management side, and I wrote a pretty good email about this, but on the reputation management side, it starts with the clients that you choose, right? Like if somebody is expecting, you know, a suite of client stories in 3 weeks, and that's what they've put in their description of what they would like, I refer them. I know that I will not be able to deliver because of my mental health, and they deserve to have someone who can do the thing that they're setting out to do. And that in turn leads me to have better testimonials and just better and deliver a client experience that's, within their expectations. And even within my contract, I do say sometimes, because of my mental health, I need a beat. So they still have that out, because I can't make someone sign a contract for instance. They still have that out to kind of make sure that I'm still for them. But I would say for a lot of businesses, the intake process as the start of the reputation management process is not talked about enough, because we just need to be honest with ourselves, and that's okay. Again, I think there's this notion in like a lot of mainstream business spaces that you have to want to work with everybody, and on the flip side, that everybody will want to work with you. But I think it's just being transparent about what you can do and what your capacity is, and that prevents a lot of conflict down the road. Because I'm the type of person who is at the stage at her big age where I don't want to be stressed out on a laptop I paid for. I want to be like doing the work that I want to do without being stressed. If not, why leave corporate, right? Like, and I do want to add some context to this. I also have a part-time role to help me manage my finances when things are slow, because again, I wouldn't characterize myself as someone who is like booked out. To me, that's actually sounds quite stressful. So I've had to create systems and backups to support this. But again, for me, having a part-time job is potentially better than having to manage people who ultimately I can't meet their expectations.
Mm. Yeah, I feel it's really important to, same as all these shoots that we listen from everywhere, like all the pressure on how a business should be run, and how marketing should be done, and all the shoots. I feel like also in terms of the business model is something that we need to stop and think about. Okay, what is the model of the business that feels good for me, and how, if I know that I have seasons of low energy, how I am going to address this in a way that I have stability, and in a way that is supporting the lifestyle that I am looking for, or that I am trying to reach. And the same way that is like, is not this is the only way of running a business, a successful business. First of all, what is your definition of success? Because maybe for me is having the capacity to close my computer and go to the mountain to have a walk, and that's for me is luxury. And for some other is other stuff, and it's okay. So it's not that one thing is right or another, but I feel like having clarity on that is important. And sometimes, as you said, like the mainstream messages is going in another direction. And even if it's something that I am not looking for, I feel like I am failing to get something that I honestly I don't want to achieve. It's like why I am getting that message as the way to lead my business, because I am doing this for having the capacity to have this flexibility and do things in my own terms. So I feel that's going back to this idea of having clarity on what is what you want, what are the priorities for you, what makes sense for you and for your business. So I think there are the connection there as well about having the clarity on, and even allow yourself to ask those questions and decide and think about what do you want. Then also the idea of there are different seasons. It's maybe now is one thing and maybe in a year is something different, and it's okay. And it doesn't mean like this better or the other. Is what I need now and how I feel like doing my business and running my business at the moment.
Yeah, and on the CX side, this comes up a lot as well. I had a call with someone and they were very concerned that they don't have a lot of profit-based results. And so I went through their testimonials and I'm like, none of your existing clients are talking about this. That's clearly not important to them because that's the theme across like 16 of these. Just because somebody said it, and it's not saying that they don't have expertise, it's saying that their expertise may not apply to your clients. I think the problem with CX right now is we're forgetting to listen to our clients. That CX strategist, even me, doesn't know your clients. The only thing that separates me from those other people is I talk to your clients. So even my own expectations of what they think was the most valuable part of your service sometimes are not true. I've had instances where someone was very profit driven and they wanted to make sure that that benefit was conveyed, which it was. They had a major income boost, which was demonstrable and provable. No issues there. But when they actually read the story, the light went on for them to simply say, oh, actually, I like the way the story went. It kind of talked about my personal story and how that kind of got me to where I am today and the things that are important to me now. And that was, again, that was someone who was like, I made tons of money. This is going to help this is going to help the service provider. I'm like, probably, but not everybody is going into a service provider project or agreement thinking that they're going to come out balling out of control or like Scrooge McDuck diving into all their coins. That's not always a priority. Sure, if you are a business coach, I can see how that would be a good benefit. If you are a money coach, makes sense. If you're promising income improvements, then yeah. But I would always say that like it really just is about looking at your individual business and seeing what your clients think is most valuable to them. And I know that's kind of counter to people's normal advice. Sure, there's normal benchmarks or things that we look for, but I think a lot of good benefits and value is lost in just constantly pushing profit. Which isn't to say you can, not talk about it before the girls start to tussle with me, but I think it doesn't serve every business. I think you really have to listen to what your clients are saying because there's often themes, and that's what happened in this instance. There were certain themes that kept coming up, which is that they have a lot of synthesizing like power and value, and they give people a lot of clarity. Which as someone who has been in decision fatigue, that's like very valuable. So yeah, I would say, in the same way that learning to kind of unlearn these stories and these narratives that are being told because they just simply do not apply to me. I think on the CX side, it's true as well. Just because somebody said you always have to look for a profit result doesn't mean you have to force it. You may find in your existing testimonials, there's actually themes that consistently recur. And that to me is more valuable than the one time you get 10x somebody's income. Because as I always say, results are not just provable, but they also have to scale. And that's kind of where income claims can get tricky.
This resonates a lot to me as like in my own business. I remember being so stressed because I don't have specific numbers, and that kind of what they tell you that you need to put in your testimonials and your results and all that. And then having that, like analyzing the testimonials of the people that are working with me and seeing like clarity is one of the things that they are highlighting, and how having someone like going through their journey together and making questions that make sense, look at things in a different way and all that, those was the thing that they were highlighting more. And then of course they get sales, that this has an impact in their business results and income. But the first thing that they were highlighting, the more important thing, was clarity. So I resonate a lot with that, because that's, I have seen that and I have experienced that, from the point of, okay, I don't have these numbers, how I am going to show like the results. I know how is impacting them, but I don't have a specific number related to the number of sales that they are having more, or things. So I totally relate to that. And going back to the idea of storytelling specifically, and when you are going to promote your business and your offering while in a season of being sad, I would love to know your thoughts on how do you think is different from someone that has clarity, how they share their personal brand stories and their storytelling, versus someone that maybe they don't have that much clarity on how to use their personal stories in their marketing. Do you think there might be some difference in how they approach this?
I mean, in terms of like the lower energy stuff, I always encourage people to not overshare and to kind of create a threshold of what they're willing to share. Cause I have a long mental health history and I don't share a lot of things. So creating that boundary for yourself for sure, to keep yourself safe, to keep yourself regulated. And I know that Katie Kurtz, who is a trauma informed practitioner. She has lots of tips, and she's just great in general. She also talks about this when you're telling your brand story. It can be quite vulnerable. And I do think there's also like mainstream narratives that are very, we all have the same 24 hours and really, it can be quite antagonistic towards us. I would say that sharing your personal brand story, however, does tend to make people feel seen in some way, whether that's your clients or your peers. So I think it's around like figuring out how you want to share that information without, again, overexposing yourself, but also remembering the kind of goal, which is to make people feel seen and understood, and to connect with your brand in that way. Whereas someone who maybe wouldn't fall under that category of low energy entrepreneur, they might feel more inclined to share more of their personal history or their personal story because it may not include things around their mental health or anything like that. So I would say that's probably the biggest challenge I face and some of my peers face is sometimes you will try to share your story and then this happens on threads a lot. People will then say, well, then you're not being able to serve your clients. If it can be challenging because you obviously want to assure people that you can handle their project, but you also want to be transparent about the fact that in order to do so, you may need more time, you may need more extended deadlines, et cetera, which is also why I tend to work more with low energy folks who kind of get that because I don't want to have to do all the extra explaining. And again, I think it's your money. You deserve to get the experience that you want, that you're looking for. But yeah, from a storytelling perspective, I think protecting yourself and how much you share and what vulnerabilities you share for the sort of sad, low energy person is different because a lot of this stuff may have started earlier because ultimately business is personal. Not everybody comes to their business or not everybody comes to them as for their service provider services coming from a good place. Like it could be that they've been burned before, or it could be that the previous service provider wasn't the right fit and they feel like they're starting from scratch. So definitely in your storytelling, holding space for the fact that you have had those experiences, but recognizing that some people may feel exposed, like just really kind of being mindful of how you share your story. But then again, on the other side, if you don't necessarily identify with that identity, I think in some ways you have the ability to be more vulnerable, which obviously makes people connect with you. That said, that vulnerability can sometimes turn people off, you know? Like, I think it's a balance on both sides to figure out what you want to share and what's important for your clients to know. So I would say the TLDR of it is figure out what you want to keep for yourself, and then also what your clients need to hear.
Mm. Yeah, I agree 100% on the boundaries. I feel that's so important. I am a really private person, so when people tell me about that concern about how they not overshare, is something that I really pay attention to. And then this idea of how, in my opinion, when you have work around your personal brand story and how you are going to share your stories, that for me that's like 100% connected to strategy. So how I look for stories and how I help people identify which stories to share is connected to what is their offering, what is their unique approach. So having clarity on those elements that you want to highlight, because those are important elements to how you do your work. When you have clarity on that, then it's like, okay, let's go back to your journey and identifying these meaningful moments that will help you to explain why those key factors, why those benefits are important, why your approach is different from others, and how that's connecting back to your own journey. I feel like when you have clarity on both of those, that's going to help you to know exactly, okay, I know this is the story that I want to highlight. This is the meaningful moment that I want to highlight because I know that is like a bridge to talk about this specific benefit. I am deciding in this moment how much I go into details or if I go super superficial level. And I have a lot of clients that they were working on corporate and then they have some kind of burnout and then leave move them to do another work. And how that process of going outside of corporate is something that is like a really vulnerable moment for them, but it's like how you share that in different scenarios is different, because maybe when you are like, I don't know, in your social content you are more superficial, but then in your newsletter you go with a little more into details, and maybe in your onboarding you are opening up a bit more because that's helping you to create a safe space for your clients. So even the same moment that you are sharing, you can decide which level of deep depth you go into it. And I feel that's when you have that set of stories. I work my I created a framework because of that, because I felt overwhelmed by the idea of just one big story, and I felt overwhelmed by the idea of not having an epic story and not knowing what to share that might be relevant. So that's how I started with the work with clients, developing this framework, and I call them story connectors. So one moment of your journey and one moment, a key factor of what you offer. So the idea is that when you have this set of stories, you know which one you are sharing, and you know which one you feel more comfortable now to share in this space. That gives you the capacity to decide and to see, okay, I feel more comfortable sharing this story that I feel is not so vulnerable to me in this moment. I feel more comfortable sharing about that because this other one, I know that is powerful, but at this point, I don't feel like talking about this one because that's making me go back to moments that I don't want to be talking about now. So I feel like even having clarity on the different moments that you want to highlight, it gives you the power to decide the level of detail, but also which one of these stories you want to bring because of how you feel when you share those. Um, I don't know in your experience, but with clients that they have some kind of low energy or mental health issues in the past, is like first is like feel safe around their own storytelling because it's so important for you. Otherwise you feel pressure, you are feel like performing or things like that. And that somehow is not helping you connect it to the people that you will feel aligned to. So I feel that bringing that honesty with yourself and what you feel okay with doing, again back to the permission, giving yourself permission to decide which narratives you are using and in which way. I feel that that brings you like the yeah, the empowerment to you are in control, in the sense of you are deciding what to share and how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I have a coaching certification. I don't call myself a coach because I don't have enough hours. But I bring those skills to the conversation. And typically, how I interview is very different than other copywriters. Again, not saying it's better. That's just how I choose to work. Before they tussle with me in the comments. So I give 90 minutes, and we discuss a set of questions, and I move more like a facilitator in the sense that like we talk about what the space is for, what they are meant to, what they can expect. And I also tell them not to self-censor because I actually don't share the transcript with clients because this is our time. And again, business is personal, so sometimes things go on tangents. Sometimes people get emotional. People have cried. I want them to feel safe in the space, so I do not send the transcript to the client. One, some of those are 50 pages. Y'all ain't reading that. And two, I don't include anything that the client has said explicitly. I don't want to share this, but it's within this context. So I don't censor them in the moment. I edit later. And then sometimes some people are like, actually, I think I feel safe to share this information because it might make someone feel seen. But as a space holder, I don't censor anybody. You can swear if you want. That's not going to appear in the final version. Like, really just express yourself, because that's so nice that you feel trusted and you feel safe in a space to speak freely, because I see myself as more of like a narrator than the person telling their story. I feel like someone's told their story and I'm narrating it.
Mm.
That's kind of how I see the story. But I always tell people not to feel pressure to share things they're not comfortable with, as well as I always reiterate, I'm not looking for any particular type of answer. Like, if this is the answer, that's the answer. I don't need you to zhuzh it up. I'm the storyteller, so I know what to do with what you shared. So don't feel like you have to invent things or overstress things. And that immediately puts people at ease, because I think they think that they have to perform,
Mm.
to your point, and we're just talking. But a lot of stuff tends to come out, and it can be a revealing experience. So yeah, I rely on the coaching side of things to kind of manage those conversations, because again, people can be vulnerable. People may have had a bad experience that affected their business quite negatively. So I try to hold space for that as much as possible.
Mm, nice. Yeah, I love that approach. And something that when I was thinking about our conversation, something that came to my mind is how I feel like when you have the foundations of your messaging and you have help around how you are sharing your stories, I feel that that also take out some pressure about being on the trends. Like, what is a trend in marketing versus what is the foundation, what are the foundations of your business, of your messaging, and the what you want to convey. I feel like that's also something that for me, even when I have been in seasons where low energy, or being sad and not being like really knowing how to approach my own marketing, I feel like when you have the clarity on your narratives, that helps to, okay, I don't need to be doing certain things just because the market is doing certain things. I can keep with my narrative, talking to my people, and being on my side of my business, even if I am not trying not to compare to others and what the others are doing. I would love to know your thoughts on that. How do you feel one thing affect each other?
I mean, the whole reason why I started doing client stories is because I wanted to talk to clients. I wanted to see their perspectives in ways that don't feel trendy, or in ways that just speak to different types of transformations. because I was doing website copywriting, and with the AI of it all, I kind of shifted away from that, and I wanted to tell more unique types of stories. And I myself have relied on client success stories for the bulk of my marketing. Um, on the author side of things, because I write horror, I have to create content. But I don't want to do that across so many things. So um, as it relates to the business, I tend to share client success stories because they are typically long form. I can cut them up and share them how I like, and they're typically evergreen. Sure, clients move on and maybe they have someone else write them or whatever, but they're still relevant. I feel like I was looking for an evergreen form of marketing because I do go through periods where I cannot, or like I just don't want to be mad on my phone that I pay for. So I don't want to be on social. So I think for me, in terms of messaging, in terms of storytelling, that's where client success stories, or you can call them case studies, really shine because they are long form. They are typically evergreen if you move away from like data points and profit like margins in particular. They can last a long time. I have a client who um one of her future clients at the time of her intake had read through all the stories and was actively referencing them as like why she made her decision. And like sure, she'd been following along for a while, but they weren't referencing like their social media posts, for instance. And they're those are great too. I just think there's something deeper about an evergreen story that people can like see themselves in. And
Mm.
that's, to your point, I think that's what long form content marketing can do. I know there's so much push for short form and all this talk about attention spans, but I'm like, I don't know. As someone who's also in the bookish space, who read like 103 books last year, I'm like, no, people are reading. Maybe you're not, but people are reading. Nonfiction, fiction, audiobooks, people are reading. It's just, is the narrative engaging enough? Because I always approach writing the stories of my clients as like little short stories. Like there has to be a hook, there has to be an inciting incident. Like I look at it very narratively, and I know that's annoying because like stories are narratives are stories, but I do really take like a creative writing, for lack of a better term, approach to those. I don't necessarily take a like um rigid kind of business framework. I'm kind of more like, how do I gauge people at the like story level? Why do we
Mm.
remember fairy tales and how that goes? That's always what I'm thinking of. How do you make those stories stick? And I think of like, yeah, fairy tales. Like I um still remember most of Goldilocks because even at my big age. So like I think the more narrative approach has helped me create those stories that, yeah, these um clients of my clients are just binging them like it's like a serialized story. So that's what I focus on, and that seems to be successful with the people I'm trying to reach.
Hmm, I love that approach. I One of the examples that I like to tell when I'm working with someone is like, when you are starting a book and you start the first page and you are already in the middle of an action and something is going on, you don't know why, but you are feeling emotions and you want to keep reading. It's like how you can share your personal story, one of these meaningful moments, in a way that you are doing that with your the people listening. I work a lot with people that they are going to be in podcast as a guest, so I we are like practicing how to articulate the thoughts. And it's like how you can do that. And it's back to the ideas of I love reading books, and it's like how certain things that I know are powerful to me when I am as in the other side listening to the story, or reading the story, how this is like engaging me and making actually keep reading and binge. And back to the point of attention, I resonate a lot with that, because it's like I am listening to interviews that are 2.5 hours, and I am watching them in small parts, but I am watching the whole thing. It's like there are room for long form content in different ways, what makes sense for you, what makes sense for your communication style. But it's not only the short form, the things that we need to focus back to the at the beginning of the conversation is like what makes sense for you, your business, and the things that make sense for you at this point. I love the idea of evergreen content and how that, especially with the topic that we are talking about, low energy and being sad, is like you want to go back to the priorities and having clarity on what is like effective for your type of business. I feel like that's going to connect with the evergreen in that sense, because it's like you have this body of work, and then it's like you are bringing back people there, even if now is a low season, you have work to have that in place. So I feel like focusing on what is going to work for you in terms of trust building, and then in terms of creating that connection. So I feel like this idea of what can be something that is not connected specifically to now, but is something that can work for you in more a long-term vision, I feel that's really powerful, especially for people that are looking for that kind of solution while being sad or while low net energy.
Yeah, I think I need people to use more like personal pronouns when they make these declarative statements. And I also recognize that for a lot of people, they're in an online business bubble, right?
Yeah.
I think we need to trust people a little bit more too, based on the stats I'm seeing, which is yeah, people are reading books. There's a reason why indie bookstores are back. People are reading. And some of those books that they're reading are like 500 words or 500 pages, pardon me,
Yeah.
600 pages. Some people are reading epics. So they can handle a 2,500 word thing. Okay. Like, let's trust our people more. And again, are people reading this in one sitting? Not necessarily. Some people are, if the content's that good, they are. But I think we just need to trust people a little bit more, because that in and of itself is like a narrative that is being pushed, right? And I could go on a tirade, but I'll spare y'all. I have a blog kind of talking about this anyway, but yeah, I do think we need to trust our clients more to enjoy the content, let's say. We don't have to, there's a place for short form, particularly, social media. I get that. I'm not saying, that short form should go away. I just think people need to be a little less dramatic, a little less defeatist, little less fear mongery about long form content, especially with how things are going on social, where there's a lot of slop. People are looking for depth. This is the perfect time to start using more long form content, like client stories. And you can cut out a good quote, you can cut out a good section. This notion of like omni channel marketing doesn't go away. But I also feel like as a low energy person, I'm not omni channeling. I'm tired. That is not always likely for me. So I like the idea of like, I know I gotta get my ring light on and film eventually. I'm still behind, but I like the idea of just being able to constantly reshare those stories, especially for people who have like large libraries of these, like 10, 12, like and upwards. And you can repurpose them to other formats. Like I think it's a good kind of singular piece of content that you can repurpose and reuse all the time. And you don't have to go back to square one.
Mm.
I know it is an incredible amount of effort at the start, whether you do it or whether I do it. And I have a very like comprehensive process for a reason, to make sure that those stories go the distance, which is why I don't aim to do a interview less than 90 minutes. And sometimes they're shorter, but like that's kind of the block, because I want us to have a meaningful conversation where I'm not censoring you, I'm not steering you towards any conclusions. But yeah, I would say that for anyone who identifies as low energy or who has like a mental health condition, definitely to consider like long form marketing, whether that's blogs or client success stories to promote yourself. Because yes, it takes a bit of work to get started, but once you're done, you can just continue saving and sharing, and you can kind of coast in those seasons.
Mm. Yeah. And to me, it's really important to also think about bringing someone to help you if you have the capacity, but if you don't, look for what are the more natural ways for you to communicate, because maybe you are more a journaling person, so go in writing, but maybe you are more like the voice note not to someone else. Maybe you can record on audio telling that and converting that later, purposing into a piece of content, written content in your website, or even in your as a podcast or so on. All that to say that if you don't have the capacity to get external help, maybe thinking about what is the more natural way for you to telling those like evergreen topics or meaningful concepts that you want to share. Look of what are the ways that for you are more natural. Maybe teaching to someone is your way. So maybe try to do in that scenario where it's like making it things easier for you. I feel that idea of trying to make things as easy as possible, especially if you are in a low moment, is like, okay, how I go back to basics, how I go back to what is the foundation, what I know that works for me and my capacity, and what are my priorities. I feel that that could be my way of, as a summary of this, like the topic that we have talked about. I would love to know what are your thoughts on how would you summarize what we have talked about?
I mean, I would say that if you're someone who has mental health condition or you identify as low energy and you're also a business, know that you belong here. And your story is unique, but it also echoes with that of many others. And you should share that story within your kind of capacity for sure. And I would say also, like, sometimes it doesn't look like what it looks like for me. I went through like mental health crisis. I shouldn't laugh. I get nervous when, I talk about it. But so going into this year, I just had to be like, what is easy and simple? So like having more conversations, more podcasts, because the thought of like opening up Canva and having to make a graphic or like having to film, like that does not feel accessible to me right now. So yeah, just knowing that like also things can change if you're not feeling up to you know, writing something or whatever. There are other alternative formats. And I have seen in terms of another effective um evergreen topic is to turn those written stories into podcasts
Mm.
or private podcasts. Well, however, that's something that people can also do. So yeah, everything that we talked about, but also like you can still go back to that source content and transition it or transform it into something that's evergreen but in a different format depending on where you are at. Because again, I'm kind of in my like, okay, I actually think podcasts are easier for me because I am a yapper. But also there's fewer questions and I don't have to open Canva and I can just speak my truth and speak from my
Mm.
place of expertise. So right now I'm kind of like, okay, let's book some podcasts because I don't want to post on feed. But yeah, if anything resonated with you in this conversation, please share your story. And while it is unique, again, a lot of people will feel seen for with it, and it can be lonely for us because there's so many kind of like mainstream people who do not get where we're coming from. So I think the more folks in a similar position share, I think it'll make us all kind of feel less alone and kind of continue to build that community.
Love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I love that for yourself, you are giving yourself the space to, okay, I go, I talk to someone, and through a conversation is a way to show your expertise, show your point of view, what makes you unique. And at the same time, you are building that body of work, because now for example, you can create a playlist with all the places that you have been a guest, and then you can share that playlist to people that want to learn more about your approach and learning more about you. So even with the same format is already something that you can repurpose, and then of course sharing in different formats and so on. I love repurposing, so I can talk about that a lot as well. So yeah, so I feel that for me it's back to okay, listen to yourself, what are your needs, and find a way that makes sense for you. and then look for others that are in a similar situation, or others that has been there, and want to share how they did it, and what was their way. I feel like even listening to examples of others is helping, has helped me for sure, to give myself permission to do things in a different way, and to go back to listen to myself and my needs. And it's like, yeah, you are allowed to do things in your own terms. And and maybe it's not the mainstream, but I love that it's like there are more people sharing a message about, yeah, there could be done in different ways, and it's totally okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's your laptop and internet connection that you pay for. At the end of the day, of course, you need to make money. I would never say that, but like, just because Johnny Two Shoes is doing it, doesn't mean you have to, and doesn't mean it works for you. I think that was a big game changer for me, because as soon as I
Mm.
realized that it A doesn't work, B, because of certain systems of oppression, it probably it was never going to work for me. Um, I don't have to follow the same expectations. Like, you are the decider, you can make the rules, and it may not get you as many clients. It or it may, like, sometimes leaning into who you are gets you exactly the people that you need to be in community with, who you need to work with. But I think, within, certain guardrails, of course, I think letting go of mainstream advice and just, accepting that it was probably built not to work with you, for you. A lot of these mainstream storytelling frameworks and stuff are built by people who have a lot of privilege, and it was just never going to work. And that accepting that just took off so much pressure. I will acknowledge that sometimes there is another way of, like, having to start to kind of build your own custom thing takes work and takes effort and labor and energy, whereas other people who don't have to deal with that can just follow the rule book, follow the playbook. But I do think ultimately it's worth it, because it creates a business that is not creating more burnout, which is what most of us have left, right? Like, it's not
Mm.
replicating those, like, nasty patterns that we are trying to escape from. But I do want to acknowledge that, like, part of the reason why maybe people don't always take that permission slip is because some of this is creating your own roadmap, which is labor in itself.
Mm. 100%. Okay, thank you so much for this time together. I really appreciate having you and having this conversation. So, how people can learn more about what you do and get in contact if they want to get your help?
So I'm most entertaining on Threads, which is, I think, all of that's linked. I'm also, my newsletter's like not salesy; it's just me yapping about CX and reputation management. There will be lots and lots of gifts. Yeah, that's a good way. And then I'm kind of revamping things. Speaking of making changes to your business to make it easier, but I probably will be, if you need support with your client success stories and you are a low energy entrepreneur listening in, I will probably be taking on projects in April, with a slightly new structure, but just send me an email or send me a DM, and we'll chat if you want to know some things before the sales page is revamped.
Okay, nice. So I'm going to make sure that also the threads links is they are in the description for people. Yeah. Other than that, if anyone through this conversation has some thoughts, feel free to share on the comments. I'm happy to keep the conversation going. Thank you so much for bringing this topic. And thank you for being here, Naila.
Thanks for having me.